So my name is, well, I wear a lot of hats. Lama David Bole, or Lama Losang. My ordained name is Karmapa Losang, which means excellent intelligence, but it's condensed to Losang. It's like a contraction. So some of my students call me Lama Losang. Some of my patients call me Dr. Bole. So again, I wear a lot of hats when I'm here as well. Some of you know I see patients here. I'm also acupuncture physician and use Asian medicine, acupuncture, herbal medicine, body work, a variety of things to balance body, mind, spirit. Asian medicine doesn't really discriminate between physical, mental, emotional kinds of things. They are all kind of go together. You can't treat the body without affecting the mind. You can't affect the mind without affecting the body. So this system of medicine is very effective for all kinds of things. Particularly the kinds of degenerative things, migraines, arthritis. You know, many of you have had some experience with acupuncture and herbs and know its value. It's a very powerful tool. Part of what I do besides the healing work is, which is also healing work, Dharma studies. I'm a fully ordained monk in the Karmapa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, and you know, my teacher, Kimbo-Karta Rinpoche, was the abbot of a monastery in near Woodstock, New York, in the mountains of the Catskills, was my retreat master. And after finishing 3.5 years of retreat, he said, go and, you know, teach. So I'm on a mission. So I think more than ever, you know, this time is very anxiety provoking with health, with the finances, you know, the economy and wars and all kinds of things. It's a stressful time, and people are looking for peace of mind. I think the most important thing that we could have is peace of mind. So what is it that we can do to achieve this kind of state of peace in our lives? And one of the things that the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago is meditation. And we could really sum up all of the Buddhist teachings very simply in a nutshell: to cultivate virtuous activity, and to refrain from doing negative actions, and to tame our mind. And meditation is a part of that. Tame the mind. Right livelihood is about you know, positive action in the world, and to do no harm, you know, both to ourselves and others. And although that sounds simple in practicality, you know, not to lie, not to steal, not to kill, not to engage in negative actions and to use intoxicants that just really distort our mind and lead to all other kinds of things, are the lay vows that a person can take in the Buddhist tradition. A monk has more vows than that, but the idea here, it's not a limitation, it's a way of progressing along the path gracefully and without too many obstacles and dead ends. So I feel very happy and privileged to have the teachers that I've had, and to have taken full ordination as a Tibetan Buddhist monk in the Kagyu tradition. So there are 4 lineages in the Buddhist tradition: the Nyingma tradition, which is the oldest of the traditions; the Gelug tradition of the Dalai Lamas. You probably have heard of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's the head of the Gelug tradition. Excuse me. And that is a scholarly tradition of study and debate. Really, the Dalai Lama oversees all of Tibetan Buddhism. You know, he's the spiritual head. He recently gave up his the kind of mundane political head. He was also the kind of president of Tibet in a certain kind of way. But with the political changes in Tibet, he has given up any kind of political orientation. Is now just spiritual head of really Tibetan Buddhism in general. There are other Buddhisms besides, or Buddhist traditions besides Tibetan. You're familiar with the Zen tradition of Japan, the Chan tradition of China, the Southeast Asian traditions. Some of you may be familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh, but Sandy, could I get a little water, please? Thank you. But all these traditions have come from the Buddha, who was a historical figure. Lived 2,500 years ago, and we are still influenced by the teachings of the Shakyamuni Buddha, who was a prince, came from a kingdom. His father, Shuddhadana, was the king of a small kingdom in what is now Nepal. He grew up with, at the time, pretty luxuriously, and his father kind of tried to keep him from worldly activities, because at the time of his birth, there's a, the story is that at 16, his mother Mayadeva had a dream of a six-tusked white elephant, which is a very auspicious symbol, that entered her. And she, thank you. Great. And she was pregnant. She, at the time when what was to be the Buddha was to be born, she went on retreat, was in isolation. She gave birth to this child very auspiciously. As it is said, she put her hand up on a branch of a tree. The Buddha came out of her side, stood up and said, "I am here to benefit all beings." Walked around, flowers grew up, and a wonderful story. And as he grew, well, the king asked the soothsayers, the astrologers of the time, what is the story with this child? What will his future be? And they said he would be a very auspicious world leader, or he would be the leader and affect many people as a spiritual guru. So the king wanted him to be to take over his kingdom, the palace, and all of the responsibilities that go with that. And he was being groomed for that, was very intelligent. And but there was something about worldly life that did not appeal so much. He saw the old age, sickness, and death, and knew that this life was impermanent and ephemeral, and decided at a young age to abandon the family and seek what would be called his enlightenment, and studied, and at one point they said, "I am determined to achieve this state of enlightenment," sat under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, and attained a state that we call enlightenment. And this is the teachings of the Buddha are revolutionary in that he said we all contain this Buddha nature. We all have this seed of enlightenment within us, and we can attain the same realization. Again, Buddha was not a god. Buddhism is a non-theistic kind of tradition, and the Buddha said that this is not peculiar to me, and it has been, there are many people who have attained the state of enlightenment. And in this era, this eon of time, the Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of this age, is the fourth. There will be 1,000 Buddhas. There was 3 before him. He was the fourth of this eon. The next one will be Maitreya. The time after that will be a person who is now known as Karmapa, Lion's Roar. And there is a number of 1,000, all listed by name, what time, what era they will come. And so there's not just one Buddha. We are all Buddhas. It's just a matter of our discovering it, to waking up to it. When the Buddha first became enlightened, he said, "I am awake." We have awakened from the dream, the illusion of this temporal, physical existence that is passing. And so all of the teachings can be really summarized, like I say, to cultivate the virtue, to avoid doing harm, and to tame the mind. So we're going to do some meditation along the way. How many of you have had some experience with meditation? Raise your hand, please. And how many are you new to meditation, have no experience? Okay, great. There's a book called Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, which is a thing for all of us to remember that, but the meditation is always fresh. It's like you can't step in the same stream twice. The things are always moving along. So in terms of meditation, one rests, the mind in its natural state, without expectation, without any kind of anticipation, and just like letting the sediment fall in a glass of water, the natural clarity of the mind becomes manifest. So meditation is a way of beginning to still, quiet the mind. Its intention is to achieve its natural mind, which we have, but because of all of our thinking and planning and decision making and reflecting on the past, projecting into the future, rarely are we in this moment with this tranquility or peace. And meditation is about really understanding the nature of the mind. The word gom, G-O-M, is the Tibetan word for meditation, and it means becoming familiar with. So what we're becoming familiar with is our own mind. And that requires a little practice, just like any other skill. If you want to be a surgeon, it requires some training. If you want to become a world-class athlete, it requires some training. If you want to be a concert pianist, it requires some training. If you want to know your mind, it requires some training. So again, the idea here is that we all, I think, whatever it is we do, is to try to be happy and to try to achieve some peace of mind. And the meditation and the teachings of the Buddha really are to avoid suffering and to be happy. That's repeatedly, there are bodhisattvas who come to help us achieve that. So from the time of the Buddha, in an unbroken chain, these lineages have prospered, and from teacher to student, from the time of the Buddha to this present time, these pure lineages, as I was mentioning, just like the light, there's a line, electricity that goes to the light that allows it to come on when you flip the switch. In a similar way, lineage, which comes from that same root word line, there's an unbroken line that can turn on the light of your understanding. So this lineage that I'm associated with, the Karmakaju tradition, whose leader is the Karmapa, who is living in India. He escaped from Tibet, which is, as you know, is under his practices were being suppressed by the Chinese invasion. So he's living in India now. He has come to the United States, and KTD, Karmatriyana Dharma Chakra, this monastery that I mentioned in the Catskills near Woodstock, is his North American home, and we'll hear more about the Karmapa as the days go on, and his kind of activity begins to flourish more and more. So I was talking about the four schools, the Nyingma school, the Karmakaju school, or the Kagyu school, the Gelug school of the Dalai Lamas, and the Shakya, four schools. We talk about it's interesting to know that, reincarnation and karma, these kinds of things that we hear about are very important tenets in the Buddhist tradition. And the 14th Dalai Lama, you will hear, when you see his title, it'll say 14th Dalai Lama. That means he has been reincarnated 14 times. The first of these reincarnated tulkus was actually the Karmapa, and he is the 17th Karmapa in this tradition. And for the Karmapa, for example, 17 times before he passes away, he writes down where he'll be found, the name of his parents, the name of his the valley where he'll be, or all the information that's needed for his senior students to go and get him. And if you've seen Kundun, or there's been a number of different movies that kind of portray this. So if anyone has any doubt about reincarnation, this is pretty clearly an indication that these enlightened masters can tell you, they know the future, they know the past. It's hard to wrap our head around omniscience, but omniscience, they know past, present, and future. So they can write down, yes, I know who my parents will be, I know when I'll be born next, I know all those things, so here it is. In 7 years in Tibet, I think there was a thing where the Dalai Lama, new Dalai Lama, was presented with several things. Is mala, a mala is like a rosary where you count your people who do mantra recitation to achieve a certain practice. When it says so many mantras like Om Mani Padme Hum, some of you may be familiar with that mantra. It's a common mantra of Chenrezig, actually, the Bodhisattva of loving kindness and compassion, who is over my head So they laid out these things, glasses, mala, cane, cup, different things, and he'd come in and say, yeah, this is my mala from last time, these are my glasses, and they'd have all kinds of things, and he would choose the ones that belonged to him. There's a story about my teacher, Karmapa Rinpoche, who knew the previous Karmapa, the 16th Karmapa. And when he went to visit the new incarnation, the 17th Karmapa at the time of his induction, ordination, an interview with him. And as soon as the Karmapa saw the Karmapa Rinpoche, he called him by a very special name that the 16th Karmapa would always call him, that no one else knew. This was kind of a special thing. So that was a corroboration to Khenpo Rinpoche that indeed this is my teacher returned, and he immediately broke into tears. It brings tears to my eyes to think about that, but it is a very special bond that a teacher has with their student, and the student has with their teacher in that way. So he is the 17th Karmapa, his activity has begun. He's very much interested in the environment. And as a younger person, he's relates to he's on a computer and he's Facebook and all these kinds of things, which is pretty far out. So anyway, we'll have some opportunity. Any question about anything so far? We really will have an opportunity to talk, hopefully answer all of your questions about Buddhism if it's new to you, or meditation if it's new to you. But by the time you leave, hopefully you'll have an understanding and an ability to rest the mind and be able to do some level of meditation. Again, there's a little learning curve that goes with that, and people say, oh, I can't meditate, my mind is too restless, or I don't have the time. But if you have a body, if you have a mind, and if you can breathe, you can meditate. So, did you have a question?
I was curious, you said earlier there were thousands
Buddhists?
that have been named, and it's the 14th Dalai Lama and the 17th. Are those?
The 14th Dalai Lama and the 17th Karmapa are current incarnations of this manifestation of Chenrezig, like a ray of his energy. But they are not the Buddhas. The Karmapa actually will be the 6th Buddha in this chain. So they come back. Bodhisattva, the enlightened mind of the Bodhisattva, is about one thing and one thing only. It's about removing suffering and helping people achieve peace of mind and realization. So everything they do, their skillful actions in the world, are about waking us up. And they return repeatedly with that intention. They've made aspirations from beginningless time to be of benefit to people. And that aspiration has become made manifest, in this particular physical body. They don't look like that, Chenrezig necessarily, but their activity is like that, and they have that that quality. Sure.
So the people that are around them, like the parents of the newly born, how do they know?
The parents don't often. They know when